Right, welcome. So today we are continuing the build on the project Fox right here. And today we are actually going to be doing or touching on fabrication. Yes, because there are a few things that we need to make, mainly brackets, to just hold things in place to make sure they aren't just laying all over the place and actually have them secured. So in today's video, it's going to be a lot of fabrication, a lot of grinding, a lot of drilling. But with this being said, sit back, relax, and enjoy today's video. So, first thing to do, we need to create a bracket for the fuel filter. As you can see, there's nothing to actually hold the fuel filter onto. So, for the current time being, it's just laying there. So, today we are going to take a piece of aluminium, bend it, attach it to this bulge here, and just create a bracket for the actual fuel filter to attach to. So firstly, what we did, well, we grabbed a piece of aluminum, we did our measurements. You rather measure twice and cut once, that way you avoid a whole lot of mistakes. So we did exactly that, and once we had our measurements and we're happy with them, well, we grabbed our piece of aluminum and our grinder with the cutting disc and went to work. As you can see, my father is cutting it because all we need is just a rectangular piece. Very simple, and all we're gonna do from there once we get our piece cut out is begin to start bending it. But before we start bending the metal, well, we need to drill a hole, because as I said, we are putting this over where the 13 nuts is on your shock tower. So we need a hole big enough to go over the stud, and that is exactly what we are able to do now with this drill bit. So from there, we need to grab a bit of sandpaper and start sanding off the rough and sharp edges on that piece of aluminium. But as you can see, this is basically what it looks like. So from there, we then grabbed our hammerhead and began to start bending the metal, because as I said, we needed to have a slight bit of a bend. So you can see my father is using the wall to just bend it, because once you actually put it on, you can see how much it actually needs to bend. Because right now, if we actually lift up the aircon line, well, when you get the bracket in place, it's still running at a bit of a heavy angle. So we needed to be more, how do I say, facing down than actually pointing out. So after a bit more bending, well, my father just bent with his hands. We can see this is what the filter is going to be looking like. So with him bending, that is a mark that he's making. So with him bending it, he makes a mark with his thumb, and now we have a point of reference as to where we need to cut the bracket, because as you saw, it is a bit too long and we don't need all that extra metal. So grab the grinder once again with the cutting disc, and choop, that is your piece of metal cut off, and that is the bracket ready to go. So you just grab the grinder to just shave off whatever sharp edges or filings are still left on the metal, and good to go. So once we found the 13 nuts, we were able to tighten down the bracket, and as you can see, this is what we are working with. This is the final product, and this is how the fuel filter is going to be mounted. Now all we need to do is just strap it up there. So for the time being, that's done. Next thing, we're gonna move on. When we run the engine, we can hear that it's making a noise that it's not supposed to. And fun fact, that sound's actually coming from the mechanical fuel pump, because yes, you gotta remember, this was previously a carb engine. So we need to remove said fuel pump and actually create a blanco for it. So to make the blanco, well, we grabbed a piece of metal and we took a spacer from the mechanical fuel pump and placed it there. With a bit of Tipex, we went around it, and we also marked the place where we need to drill the holes. Side note, here's a sound check of what the car is currently sounding like. Now, if the car's not sounding the best, it may have to do something with the exhaust. And that's because, well, when we first stripped the car, I grabbed a hacksaw and then began to slice the exhaust off. Yes, I know we don't all make the best decisions looking back now, but regardless, we cut the exhaust off and then we needed to just tack it back up in order to get the car to the exhaust place, or to at least start the car, have it idle without it piercing our eardrums. So, one of the evenings after my father came home from work, grabbed a welding machine and did a few tacks just to get the exhaust in place. And with a bit of gangam, this thing is just like a putty. Closed it, so that may explain the reason why the car may not be sounding the best at the current time. So this might be the reason that the car does sound a bit offish. So back to the blank off plate. So once more we grabbed the drill with the same drill bit that we used on the aluminium plates, and we began drilling. And ladies and gentlemen, just remember, safety first when it comes to using power tools. So we then drilled our 2 holes out. We then picked up our grinder with the cutting disc and then began cutting out the outline of the shape that we needed. So with the plate done, it was now time to remove the mechanical fuel pump. So to do so, well, you're gonna need to grab an Allen key, because it is Allen key bolts that hold the mechanical fuel pump in place. It's just 2 bolts on either side, and once you remove those, well, then you just have to pull the mechanical fuel pump out. And with the pump being out, you can now see the size of the hole that is left in the block that you need to seal up. So before we actually put this metal blank off over it, well, we're just gonna grab a clean cloth, wipe off whatever oil or petrol or whatever grease is there before we put the blank over it. So we're just working with a clean surface to then put the blank onto. We then grabbed our blank off piece to just make sure, okay, it does fit, the holes do line up. And once we were happy with it, well, then it was just time to mount it on. So we grabbed our bolts now, put the plates on and began to tighten the bolts down. After we put a bit of sealer around it to just make sure, okay, there's gonna be no possible leaks coming out from this blank off. So that is one thing done, and now it should actually change the tone or the sound that the engine makes, because now the mechanical fuel pump is not going to be running as the engine is running. So with the blank off now being in place, as well as the fuel filter being mounted to its bracket, well, there's only really one more bracket to make, and that's for the computer box. Yes, so when it comes to the computer box, we've made the decision to mount it here behind the battery. And the reason for that being, we don't want to drill a hole into the car to run the loom through to get the computer box to be mounted within the car. And we also don't want to damage where the rain tray is by drilling a hole through there, or to bend the metal lip to then run the wires over it to then have the computer box sit under the rain tray. Now, what we are going to be doing is something similar to what we did with the fuel filter, and that is going to be creating a bracket from where the 13 nut is and coming down and supporting on the bracket. So, with that being said, we had some course of action. We grabbed a piece of aluminium, measured it out, and then, same process as earlier, began cutting. After cutting the plates out, well, it was time to grab a hammer and start knocking it to start taking shape, and to see how we were gonna work the metal in order to get it to the shape that we needed it to be. So I won't lie to you, this was a bit of a time consuming task to actually get the metal to the shape that we wanted to be, because it required a lot of banging, a lot of checking, more banging, more checking, more banging, more checking, and you get how the cycle went, until eventually we were happy with somewhat of a shape. This is more or less what we envisioned, so we then grabbed the grinder and went over the rough edges to just smooth it out and make sure, okay, look, there aren't any sharp edges, we're not going to cut ourselves when handling this piece of metal. So after doing this, we then grab more sandpaper, sanded off the edges once more. We need it smooth and not that there's any metal shards sticking out that could possibly just cut us or just cause unnecessary problems. So we did that, and this is what we were left with. This is the piece of aluminum now after we sanded it, and as you could see, we were missing a hole. So that is what we're gonna do now. Grab the drill and make the hole that we need. So then we put the bracket on, and we saw that, okay, it did need to be adjusted slightly. So you can see my father bending it there to try and get the right angle that we are looking for to now connect the computer box onto. So as I said, we are just trying to get the right angle to then drill the holes for the computer box to then have its self-threading screws go through and attach the computer box to the mounting. But for the time being, this is what we are looking at when it comes to the mounting. So the next thing we did, well, we grabbed the computer box and we need to jot out where exactly were we going to drill into the mounting, where were we going to make the holes for the computer box to attach to the actual brackets. And with us having our markings, we then grabbed the drill and began to make the holes. We then use 8mm self-threading screws to hold the bracket to the computer box. We then mounted the computer box, and once we mounted, we saw that there was a bit of an issue, because once you touched it, you can see the computer box wobbles. So to fix the wobbling issue, well, we grabbed some rubber insulator, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, it sticks. We stuck some pieces onto the computer box to just give it a bit more gap, so that it is resting on the car's body and it's not actually metal that is going to be now rubbing on the paint or scratching or damaging the paint. And this is actually going to stop the shaking or the jiggling motion now of the bracket now once we start moving. So as you see now, with my father pushing down, there is movement, not as bad as before, due to the fact now we have that rubber underneath the computer box supporting it from the back. So there we have it. This is what the mount looks like. Well, this is what it did look like. This was like, how do I say, like Mark 1 of the mount. Then we decide, hey, you know what? It is looking a bit big. So we then pulled it off. We took the computer box off and began cutting the edges to then shape it to have it more closely matched to the computer box, to not have a lot of excess metal that isn't needed. So we then did that, and after cutting it, we just used a grinder, and as you can see, we then started curving the edges to remove all sharp edges and just give it a smoother, cleaner look. So once we did that, mouse it back up, and this is the final product. I want to hear your guys' thoughts. How do you feel? What do you think of the computer box being mounted in the front? Would you change it? Would you prefer to bend the metal lip here, to run the wires over here, have the rain tray cover it, or just run a hole through the firewall, have the computer box be inside the cabin with you? But honestly, I haven't seen many people do it like this. So that could be for a specific reason, or just because no one's really thought to do it yet. Probably people have done it, but as I said, we didn't want to drill a hole to get the computer box inside the car. We didn't want to bend this metal lip here. So this is where the computer box now stays. As you saw, it doesn't move much. It has to do with the rubber being here, which now rests on top of the car's body. So you can see it is supporting the back. But what do you guys think of the mount? I know I do need to clean it up a bit, make it a bit more pleasing to the eyes, but honestly, it's not looking bad. It's looking a bit different, and this is what the engine bay is currently looking like now. If you are seeing, yeah, there are no injectors, but yeah, that's a story for another video. This basically wraps up today's video. And if you want to see more contents on the VW Fox build, check out the channel. We've gone through what entire front suspension, engine rebuild, rear suspension, and so much more. So and there's still so much to do on the car. So if you want to follow along with the build, well, you know what to do. Hit that subscribe button, put post notifications on. Don't forget, it is free to subscribe. So don't be shy, join the family, join the journey, and I will see you guys in the next video.